Hello, dear ones. Reverend Beth Simmons here with your midweek moment. And not only is it midweek, but it is midwinter. We are crossing the quarter turn between the winter solstice on December 21st and the spring equinox on March 20th. So this week, February 1st, marks that sort of turning past the midway point. Perhaps you have noticed, at least here in the northern hemisphere, in the north sort of even northern part of the northern hemisphere, that the days are in fact getting a little longer. Of course, they started getting longer right as soon as we hit the solstice, but now is when we start to notice it a little more. The evening doesn't come quite so early, and it's a sign of hope for the spring to come. Of course, the weather is not going to be very spring-like this week, but still, the hope is there. So this week, I wanted to tell you a little bit about the history of this little moment in the season, because it is a day, February 1st, is celebrated in the Celtic world historically as Imbolc. It is that quarter turn. The coming of spring, the promise of lengthening days, the return of milk, so the beginning of the birth of the sheep and the lambs and the kids, that would allow the families to have milk again, and so that historical ancient celebration is how we got Groundhog Day here in the United States. And if you're watching this from somewhere that's far away and you're wondering what the heck Groundhog Day is, on February 2nd in the United States, we have this furry little animal called the groundhog, and it's sort of fat and short brown hair, and the tradition is that if the groundhog sees its shadow on Groundhog Day, it is another 6 weeks of winter. If it doesn't see its shadow, spring is just around the corner. Now, how we got from the ancient tradition of Imbolc to Groundhog Day is one of those stories of a mixing of culture and the Christianity mixing with the pagan celebrations. So in Ireland, the Celts celebrated Imbolc. They also celebrated the goddess Brigid, who became eventually Saint Brigid. And she is the only female patron saint of Ireland. She's also considered a representation of the Trinity, because she is sort of like the goddess Brigid has three faces or three aspects. But anyway, her feast day is also celebrated starting the evening of February 1st and going into February 2nd. February 2nd is also considered Candlemas. So this was the day that the church sort of took over this feasting and celebration that was already happening and turned it into a recognition of Jesus's presentation in the temple. So we've, gone from Jesus's birth in December, and now we have when he is brought to the temple. And so candles, people would bring their candles to the church to have them blessed. It is the day when the greenery of the household was sort of cleaned out and brought out, cleared out, burned in fires. And Saint Brigid Day was she is the saint of the hearth, and she was thought to give protection over the home, over new life coming in the spring. And so there were a couple different traditions. There would be a meal, of course, a festive meal that a family would celebrate. She has a special cross, which you can certainly look up online to see St. Brigide's cross, and it is made of rushes or straw, and so they would be making that. They would be making those. The evening of February 1st, it is said that if you put a small piece of cloth or ribbon either out in your yard or on your windowsill as Brigide comes through. Now, I'm not sure if this happens in the U.S. Because this is not her territory, but at least in Ireland, if you put out the cloth, if she touches it, that is supposed to give you a blessing for the coming spring and for the coming year. So again, nothing to do with a groundhog, if you notice. However, with the celebration of Candlemas, this moment in the season, there were some Christians in Europe who believed that if the sun was out on Candlemas, then that would mean 40 more days of winter. 40 more days is about 6 weeks. I'm actually not sure if there's a relationship to Lent here, which is also 6 weeks, 40 days, but it's very possible given the time of year that we're coming up on Lent. Then they started, in Germany, they started getting a little bit more specific about how one said whether it was sunny or not, and that is if the woodland creatures, particularly badgers, saw their shadows, then that was a sunny day. So then when the Germans immigrated here to the U.S., particularly the Pennsylvania area, you have the Pennsylvania Dutch cultures, they then brought that tradition with them, and since we have no badgers at this, unfortunately, really, over in this part of the world, they chose the local groundhog, some also call him a woodchuck, but around here he's called a groundhog, to take on this tradition and this mantle, and that is how on this February 1st and 2nd, we celebrate a groundhog. And again, if you are not from the U.S. or this area and you've never seen the groundhog, there are a few different traditions, but Punxsutawney Phil is pretty much the classic. It is a thing. It is a whole thing. There are men with coats and top hats pulling this poor fat groundhog out of the ground to see if he sees his shadow or not. It's a big ceremony. However, if you're not into that, certainly a recognition of St. Brigide's Day, of the goddess Brigide, of Imbolc, of just the promise that we are getting through the winter, that light is returning, even if, at least in our area, things are still very much covered in snow. And it's going to get very, very cold. The shift has happened, is happening, and we are headed towards spring, and God has been with us throughout this season, and will continue to be with us as we head towards the longer, warmer, hopefully eventually, days of spring. So that is your little mini history lesson on how Groundhog Day came from the tradition of Imbolc. We celebrate Imbolc in our family. Usually we have some sort of little fire. We burn, we take our Christmas tree is still up. We take our Christmas tree out. We burn at least a few of the branches before giving the tree to our goats. And we sort of not really set intentions, but we sort of reflect on the winter behind us and our hopes for the spring, and we eat cheese and chocolate, usually things made with milk because of the milk. Of course, now we have milk available to us all year round, but in recognition of our ancestors, for whom the winter was indeed long without a lot of the treats that we ship in from other places nowadays, or that we're able to maintain throughout the season. I know for some of you, chickens who have chickens or who know local farmers, the chickens have started laying. Many of the chickens have started laying again. Another sign that we are headed through the darkness, headed out of the darkness of winter and into the promise of spring and new life. One of my chickens actually tried to go broody a week or so ago, which means she tried to start like sitting on some eggs, like to hatch them, which I kicked her off the nest because it's a little chilly for that. Not quite. She's jumping the gun a little bit for spring. Not quite ready to bring some chicks into this frigid weather. But so happy Imbolc, midwinter, St. Brigide's Day, Groundhog Day, Candlemas, whatever you are celebrating this week. I hope it is wonderful and full of light and hope. And I hope that if you are in the northern part of the U.S. that you are staying warm and safe. Have a wonderful week, everyone.